G'day there guys, my name's Scoby Ibrahim. I'm a health, nutrition and fitness coach over at the Ancestral Body. Today I'll be taking you through the rather simple process of making kombucha tea. Now for those wondering, kombucha is a traditional and naturally fermented, lightly carbonated probiotic tea, served cold. Now this stuff is absolutely delicious. It supports immune function, improves digestive health and repopulates the gut with really good bacteria. Kombucha also happens to be packed full of B vitamins and antioxidants, so it's really, really healthy for us. Okay guys, let's get started. For the first fermentation, you'll need a little bit of equipment to get you started. So I'm using a 3-litre heavy-duty mason jar. You can change the size of the jar, but you'll have to also change the ratios of the ingredients you use, obviously. Also just a plain, simple water kettle. You'll also need a wooden spoon. You'll need a clean tea towel or cloth. And you'll also need some elastic bands. Okay, you'll also need your ingredients, obviously. First up, you'll need a Scoby, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. It's usually housed in a couple of cups of starter tea or kombucha. Sometimes it's from your previous batch, so you can just use that or you can buy some store-bought stuff. You'll also need 6 to 8 bags of caffeinated tea. I'm using English breakfast organic tea today, but you can use other caffeinated tea, works best. You'll need 1 full cup of organic raw sugar. White sugar also works, but I just prefer to use the raw stuff. You'll also need a couple of litres, even a few litres, of filtered or bottled water. And for the second fermentation, you'll also need some small pieces of seasonal fruit. I'm using some apples, some pieces of lemon, and a few strawberries for my second ferment. But you can choose what fruit you prefer to use. Okay guys, so grab your sterile jar, put those tea bags in. Next step, of course, is to put your sugar into the jar also. So next you'll need about 500 ml of boiling water that goes into the jar. Now if you're concerned about that at all, you can prepare this in a clay pot, for example, no problem. So you'll need to allow the tea to steep for, say, 5 minutes or so. It depends how strong you like your tea, really. And also waiting for that sugar to fully dissolve. And you can stir this from time to time also. So now you just want to fish out each tea bag. Now just remember how many were in there so you can make sure that you get every single one of them. The last thing that you want is for a tea bag to be left in there during the fermentation process. So you just want to make sure that the sugar is nice and dissolved. So just give it a stir once the tea bags are out. So the last thing that we want to do is add our Scoby and starter tea into some boiling hot water. So we need to bring this tea back to room temperature. And we do that by simply adding some room temperature water. So we're adding more water. And again, we want to leave about 3 inches at the top of the jar, room for the Scoby and starter tea. So with really clean hands, you want to fish out a Scoby and just place it gently in the jar of room temperature tea and then pour in your 1 or 2 cups of starter tea to the batch. leaving just a little space up the top. It's not that important, it won't overflow. Next step is just take your cloth, place it over the jar, use your elastic band or string to secure it. That allows it to breathe. That'll go in a cool, dry place, perhaps your pantry or cupboard, for roughly 2 to 4 weeks. I usually go for about 3, but if you like it a little bit sweeter, you'll go for around that 2-week mark, and if you like it a bit tart, you'll go for that 4 weeks. Don't worry if you start to see some brown growth in there. That's totally normal and totally okay. You just want to be careful of seeing any green mold or even grey mold. If so, just chuck it away and start over. For your second ferment, you'll also need a little bit of equipment. You'll need a wooden spoon. You'll need a small funnel, of course, and a sieve. You'll need some glass bottles and some lids. And you'll also need a medium-sized glass jar and its lid as well. So it's been about 3 weeks or so, and we're ready to now bottle our kombucha for the second ferment. So you just carefully remove the cloth and elastic band or string off the larger jar. And what we should have here is a couple of Scobies, and it looks like a new one has formed up the top, and our old Scoby is down the bottom. Don't be too worried about where they're settling. So what we'll do next is grab our smaller jar, because we want to save those Scobies for another batch. And I've just washed my hands, they're nice and sterile, because I will use my hand to pick this Scoby up, so just make sure your hands are clean. We just fish it out, drip it off, put it in the other jar, and you'll just want to pour some of that kombucha into the jar, and you can store that away in the pantry. Now for the bottling, just put your funnel on top of there so we don't make a mess, with the sieve on top, just to sieve out any of that floating goodness, and we pour our kombucha into our bottles. We must make sure to leave about 1 inch up the top for our fruit. And next up, we simply put our pieces of fruit in the bottles. I usually just put a couple of pieces of apple in each. And of course, a couple of pieces of lemon. Again, you can choose what fruit suits you. This is the recipe I enjoy. Just a single strawberry in each bottle. So now we'll need to store these outside of the refrigerator for about 2 to 4 days to really get that carbonation up. Now, if you're at all worried about any exploding bottles, I like to house them in a sealed esky. And in 5 years of making kombucha, I've never once had an exploding bottle. And one time I even left them for 6 or 7 days and totally forgot about them, and still nothing exploded. But just to be safe, we'll use an esky. So once that's ready, all you do is transfer the bottles over to the fridge, and there you have it, you're ready to drink it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me along this process. I hope it's been helpful for you, and come over and say g'day over at theancestralbody.com.au. Thank you very much.